My name is Jeremy Wolf, Executive Director of More Than Baseball, and you're listening to The Grind, our podcast about the lives, lessons, and journeys of professional baseball players. Today's episode is with Matt Paré.
I am originally from Portland, Maine, live in Los Angeles now. And the teams I played for, like the minor league teams.
Yeah.
The Augusta Green Jackets, San Jose Giants, hot second with the Richmond Flying Squirrels, and an even hotter second with the Sacramento River Cats, which felt like a fever dream. And there's no record of me being there except for a transaction.
After being drafted in high school, Matt went undrafted out of Boston College and ended up playing 5 seasons in the minor leagues with the San Francisco Giants. Since then, he's created content on his YouTube channel, Homeless Minor Leaguer, and now creates content for Uninterrupted and skits with our friend Ty Kelly. Matt speaks candidly about what life in minor league baseball is really like and opens up about what his time on the inside taught him about the game and about life. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think y'all will too. Quick disclaimer, we recorded this conversation prior to the 2020 MLB season, so you'll hear some references to the lockdown and players getting ready for the shortened season. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, former major leaguer, creator of the Journeyman series on YouTube, and my good friend Chase Darno will be hosting the podcast with me. We're so excited to do this together. Can't wait to give you guys a new perspective on life in professional baseball. Here's episode 9 of The Grind with Matt Paré. So with the Giants the entire way through?
Yeah, with the Giants, 5 years.
Okay. And what round were you?
So I was drafted out of high school by the Astros in the 26th, didn't sign, and then went to college and then didn't get drafted again. So I was an undrafted free agent out of college.
Where'd you go?
Went to Boston College.
What years?
So I was there the fall of 2009 to spring 2013.
What did that teach you? Because that's an interesting way to get into professional baseball, is being undrafted. So having gone drafted, playing college baseball, knowing that thinking that you're gonna get drafted after, and then being undrafted, what was that process like for you, kind of through your college career and then after?
Totally. Yeah. So I always looked at college, especially after getting drafted. I didn't think I would get drafted out of high school, but it was because I had moved down to Florida my senior year of high school and I got in front of more scouts. So I was, feeling pretty good about myself going to college. I had secured a Cape League contract. I was like, it was like I was going to college. I was like, oh, I'm only going to be here for 3 years and then I'm going to get drafted. And I have a good freshman year, play on the Cape, do well there. And then sophomore year hits and everything gets turned upside down. My season starts off slow. Before that, I had injured my knee. I was playing on a torn meniscus at the time, tore it even more, ended up getting surgery. And I went into the surgery thinking I was going to be back to play summer ball in Yarmouth Dennis with in the Cape League again. And I ended up coming out of the surgery and they were like, oh, well, instead of a 4-week recovery, it's going to be a 4-month recovery because we had to repair it instead of remove it. You wouldn't have been able to catch again if we had removed the part of the meniscus. So that was like, oh shit, like what I had never even thought about like my career ending. Like my career could have been over and I wouldn't be a catcher anymore. My knee is messed up. And that's the only position I could have played. 5'10" and a half, you round up and add an inch. I'm listed as 6 foot. But at the end of the day, like slow, like can't really field well. I was known for my hitting, and it's like a catcher who has a bad knee, like what good are you? So that was when I started to really think about outside of baseball and my life outside of baseball, and realizing that you, as a baseball player, you think, and just as an athlete in general, you think your life is only up until like 40. It's like this weird concept that we build because we see all our stars or all our heroes when we're young retire at that age, right? It's like you see Derek Jeter who's retiring around that age, and everyone else. It's just like, why? What? Like, why do we have that? And I think it's because there's so much more to life post your playing career, but I had never really thought about that. So that was when I started laying the groundwork in my life for post baseball, and just starting to be more than an athlete. Um, so I was really into sports psychology at the time. I was a human development major. And then I spent the whole summer with my sophomore year going into junior, rehabbing my knee at Boston College, taking classes. And junior year comes, I have like an average year. I go play summer ball. I only got a temp contract because it's like a junior, didn't play the year before. It's like, we gotta see something. So I get a temp contract there, and then they already have like 2 other catchers. So it's like, okay, why am I going to stick around here and rot the bench all summer? So I went to Newport in the NECBL and played there, which one of the best experiences of my life. I had so much fun in Newport. Are you from Newport?
Oh, that's what team I was on.
Oh, oh my gosh, man.
The best summer of my life.
Easily the best summer of my life. Yeah. So that was 2012. I was there.
Okay.
What years were you there?
15.
Okay.
Summer of 15.
Dude, that playing in Newport, we ended up winning it that year. It was just like, we had a stacked team. So fun. Yeah, I mean, I loved it there. I can't stress enough. I'm sure you also loved it.
It was the most fun I ever had playing baseball.
Yeah.
That environment, Cardines Field, Chuck and the ownership group. Like, and I lived about a block north of the field. My host family gave me a scooter. So I had a blue, like a Vespa.
Oh my
and I
gosh.
rode that around the town. I went to the beach every morning.
Which that's like a perfect place to ride it around too.
It was the best setup. Like when I talk to kids about playing summer ball, I say do whatever you can to get in, at least in the NECBL. But to have the opportunity to play for Newport was the most fun I ever had.
100%. I couldn't agree more with everything you said. Yeah, the management's amazing.
Goals.
Until even just like the town, right? Like you go around there. Was it Thames Street is what it's called? I think. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was too much fun. Had too much fun with everyone there, and especially winning it. Made it even sweeter of a summer, but it would have been great regardless of winning.
Goals fly together.
Yeah, goals fly together. That's right.
What a small world, man. And that's baseball in a nutshell.
Totally. So from there, I went back to college, and then it's like, okay, have another average year at college, and like just sitting around like 250, and like that's not going to get you drafted as a catcher with a knee surgery. Like even if I got drafted before, and you know what I mean, it's like that wouldn't be a great investment. And I was committing to, or I was like starting to look at grad school. So I got into Boston University's master's program for sports psychology. And that was what I was going to do next, post baseball. I was like ready to do that. And, but I didn't know, I was like, that was my plan. I watched the whole draft, don't see my name get called. And I was like, well, how can I still play baseball? I still wanted to play. So I got in contact with Bobby Evans, who was the assistant general manager at the time for the Giants. And he was like, why don't you come to Arizona and work out with us? And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do that. I flew myself down to Arizona, worked out. And then the next day, like I got a call that I got offered a contract, and I was stoked. Spent 5 years in the Giants organization, and ended up getting released. I know I'm glossing that over like it's 5 years, but obviously like we'll get into that. But yeah, spent 5 years in the Giants organization, and I got released spring training of 2018. So it's been 2 years since I've been done playing.
How did an undrafted guy play 5 years of minor league baseball? Because you don't hear that often. The only undrafted guy I can think of is TJ Rivera. I'm sure there are a handful of others, but TJ Rivera from the Mets just hit at every level. Like, he was a great hitter. He perfected something that would get him to the big leagues.
Totally. I think I definitely projected that I had a tool in my hitting ability. It's just, I don't think the opportunities were there with the Giants a lot of times. And not to say that I would have made it to the big leagues had I had more opportunities, right? I just think it's like, that's not only like that, but I do, the reason why I stuck around for 5 years was because I was a good teammate. I'd like to think I'd like to think I was a good teammate and a good organizational guy. And being an organizational guy means that, you're someone that can kind of plug into anywhere, whether that's at like a lower level, and kind of mentor the younger guys, or at a higher level and still be able to catch some of those guys and call a good game, especially as a catcher. So I think that's kind of where my versatility was in the organization. And there was never that spot where it was like, okay, this is a good fit to start getting more at bats and stuff like that. And I was fine with that. It wasn't like, but towards the end of my career, it ended up being, and especially the last year, the at bats were so few and far between that I really was anxious for every at bat, because it's like, this is do or die. Like it's such a small percent, or it's such a large percentage of the amount of at bats I'm going to get this entire season. And yeah, I just remember how stressed out and anxious I was for every at bat in my last season. And I was just like, it was almost, when I got released at spring training, it was almost a relief. I was almost, because I was ready for the next thing, because I had, when I was playing, I had my YouTube channel, Homeless Minor Leaguer, where I made comedy sketches and vlogs. I really wanted to work in digital, but also entertainment as like my next career. I abandoned sports psychology. It didn't interest me anymore. I think it was more of just like where I was at the time, with like, it was a good thing to be studying at the time of like everything I was going through in college when it came to identity and whatnot. So that transition, after my baseball career ended, I wasn't upset. I looked around the clubhouse on the day I got released, and a bunch of other guys had gotten released that day too. And I just remember not being as upset as they were, and not a knock on them. I think it was more just like a knock on how little I was like really invested in my own baseball career in general. But that didn't mean that I didn't have identity crisis issues. I think you can do as much as you think you can for preparing for when you're done playing. But I don't think anything truly can prepare you for when you're done, and that identity crisis that you go through of like, who am I? What do I even do? Who am I? And I think it's because you've been training for 20, 30 years to do this one thing. And then it's just like, none of that work mattered anymore. None of those reps. What did it all mean? Right. And you just start to question everything. So I think that I had that epiphany that I was done, but I was also like, what's next? And working in entertainment, it's not the same as baseball, right? Where it's, you play t-ball, then little league, then you kind of work your way up through high school, college, pro ball, and the big leagues, right? There's not that ladder. It's like you work on this project that gets you to know this person, that then you end up like making this connection, and somehow you're doing this. It's like, it's not that same thing. There's not that like working up to that level of, being at the Oscars.
Did your transition out of baseball, and you said being relieved, which is what I felt. I put so much pressure on my performance because I knew that it was fleeting, and instead of enjoying it while I could, it was putting pressure on, I have to do something today that's going to keep me around or move me up. But you had mentioned that putting pressure on each ever opportunity, it took a toll on you. So getting released became a relief because of burnout, or because you had already prepared for when baseball was over?
That's a good question. I think it was I was ready, but like I said, your identity's so tied into your sport that it's still really hard regardless of whether you think you're ready. But I do think that relief, it getting released gave me the okay to start something new and uncertain. And I think with baseball, it was like there weren't many novel experiences left. Obviously, like making the major leagues would be a pretty novel experience. But it didn't feel like there was anything that was like, okay, feel like I had really like gotten the most out of my experience and was ready for the next thing.
How do you apply what you learned in baseball to what you're doing now? Because you said it's a different environment. You're not working your way up to anything. It's pretty much on the value of the content, or on what you write, on what you create. But is there something from baseball that has helped you transitioning into this career?
Sure. I think in general, as an athlete, you have a slight advantage just when it comes to competitiveness and breaking down skills and understanding skill acquisition. I think there's a not bluntness, but a like even like a matter of factness that comes with like how you talk with your teammates. It's just like authentic, and you're never really like passive aggressive with your teammates because they're your peers, and you could just like say some shit and get it off your chest. And I think that is like a breath of fresh air when it comes to working outside of sports. Like that doesn't happen often. So I think that like some of those aspects for sure. And even just being like so detail oriented in my work. I think now my mantra is measure twice, cut once, right? That is like when it comes to video editing, producing, whatever, it's making sure I am doing everything before I'm like, okay, this is like, I'm going to send this out. I'm going to like publish this. I think it's so important. And yeah, just being detail oriented is huge.
Homeless minor leaguer is something that I would watch when I was playing. And,
Really?
yeah, and something that motivated me to help make more than baseball, right? Because there's a side of homeless minor leaguer that it's fun, it's entertaining. But
thanks, man.
yeah, no, it's great, and absolutely, but the underlying factor is the environment itself shouldn't be this way. The thesis, it's almost like it camouflaged itself to talk about the issues within minor league
think
baseball.
That's what comedy does, right? Is you can camouflage a lot of the maybe not even camouflage, but you wrap these up. It's I forget what a comedian said it, but it's like putting a clown mask on a something like on a sad person or something like that. Or I forget what the saying is, but yeah, you're dressing something up
It's
that
satire.
is, yeah. And I think that's why it also resonated. Like the Giants were really cool with me doing it because I never was outright like minor leaguers should be paid more.
Yeah.
Right. And I think during my career, and I'm sure you can speak to this, that's not something that you bring up because you want to be a good boy and keep your job. And right. It's like, and I think that's like, there's certain things that I said in interviews that contradict what I say now. And I think that's just because I didn't want to lose my job. Like I still believe these things. Right. I think one of my lines in Minor Leaguers Need Your Help, the whole parody Adopt a Minor Leaguer parody video of this Sarah McLachlan, Susan Sarandon videos. It was like, Ty wasn't born into this life. He chose this life. But that's just like a fail-safe line to write in there, right? So I'm making sure I'm protecting myself as a player. Mm-hmm. And I would say that in interviews. I'm like, well, I know what I signed up for. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't make it right. Like this is a system. This is a systemic issue that just because like, yeah, I'll play for peanuts. That's a thing that people say. And it's like, but you shouldn't have to. And I think it's because we romanticize baseball and the journey and all these things that lend itself to being okay with paying people less than their worth. And because when people come out on the other side of it, it's like, wow, that like, can't believe it. That's amazing. And like, good for those guys who did it. Good for those guys who did make it. But it doesn't make that what's going on for the other guys who don't make it doesn't make it okay.
When we started More Than Baseball, and I'm sure you hear too with advocates for minor leaguers, it's, I would do it for free, shut up and dribble. You're playing a game for a living. Mm-hmm. And I think both with what you're doing and what we're doing, it works in tandem because, again, the environment shouldn't be this way.
Totally.
And so if you provide these players the opportunity and the ability to recover and eat better and sleep better, you're only going to enable them to prolong their career or help them play better. And so both in what you're doing,
or just even be healthy,
even be happier
right?
People. Right.
Yeah.
And so
like care about your employees. And
so the psychology of it, if you want to even go that deep, is if and even the social psychology of it is if these employees are happy, they will perform better. I think that's the underlying thesis of what each of us are doing. And it's a testament to the complexities of the system that it hasn't been fixed yet.
Totally. No, you nailed it. And it's, I think you would really see a return on your investment as an organization if you invested those dollars into the players, because you say I'm a player who is an undrafted free agent, right? Or even a 30th rounder who's a senior sign. It's like, you're not getting much money. Say you have some student loans. Okay. So those are things you're going to have to pay off. These are all stressors, right? And obviously stress doesn't lead to great performance. If a player is able to, he has his student loans, he needs to be making income. He's expected to train in the off season. Yet he then has to go drive Uber until 4:00 in the morning. That's not a great use of his time as a professional athlete, is staying up until 4 a.m. and then he has to go train at LA Fitness or wherever he has to work out because he can't afford to train with like an elite performance coach. So if you paid them what they're worth, or even something in the off season that they could supplement their income, they can invest. It's a stimulus package, right? It's a stimulus package for their career, and they could then take that money and invest it into themselves. And I don't think we're seeing that right now. And organizations have their camps that are designed to bring in guys, their prospects from the organization, to do those workouts with them, which they're also not paid for. They're just given per diem, wild. But they're expected to go, right? And you're expected to train. You're expected to be ready to go by the time spring training goes, also not paid for that. And then, but it's like, you're only paid for the season. Why? It's not like my work's done. I can't go and apply for unemployment in the off season. So what really is why are you holding that back, those opportunities? And I think that's, I just think it's completely wrong.
Major League Baseball's response to that would be, well, we're going to cut short season. We're going to cut 42 teams. So less players now have the opportunity to play professional baseball. We're going to cut the draft this year to 5 rounds. So there are going to be less players coming in, and 20 rounds for the foreseeable future. And so,
sure. And my response is, you made $1.2 billion in profits last year. I think you can afford it.
Yeah. And so it's interesting to see how they have been proactive. They have been thinking about it, but it's to the detriment in which what we both believe, it loses jobs, which means it loses opportunity and valuable resources. And I think with both what you're doing and more than baseball is the day-to-day. And I think you guys are the long-term.
Totally.
And the Kevin Kiermaiers, who are all-stars, and, he was a 31st round pick.
Mm-hmm.
There's less Kevin Kiermaiers than me. We were actually the same pick in the 31st round, 940. And 99% of pick 940 over the last 20 years, hasn't gotten to the major leagues, but that one that does, is a valuable asset to his team. And so if the teams focus more on those players who have all the skill,
mm-hmm.
but Kevin Kiermaier, I don't know his signing bonus, but he probably had a job in the offseason. Imagine if he could spend the time on his performance and recovery and development, and what that would do for the Rays. They could have traded him away for pieces. They could, have brought him up earlier if he had progressed that way. Like, there's so many. If you look at baseball as a resource and baseball players as a resource, it's all you're doing is putting money into this resource in the hopes that it builds itself up, or that player has the opportunity then to be valuable at the level in which, you could trade him away. Or
sure. And I think, unfortunately, Major League Baseball does look at them as a resource. It's just as an expendable one at that. And I think they don't, like you said, there's reasons why guys are in organizations. It's because they have a tool that they think could help, or that could get them to the major leagues. And it's like, but if you don't give them the tools in order to, I think that's a bad way to put it, the tools to build that tool up, or to build that skill that is going to get them to the major leagues, what are you doing? You're just like, well, it looks like you didn't develop it. And it's like, well, no, it's just like one guy had a head start. And I think that's another thing about baseball too, is that just in general, the sport is, when it comes to socioeconomic standing, that's a huge aspect of it, especially like at the amateur level, right? Where we see that of like travel ball and how much that has taken over the sport, that now it's like it's pay to play. And that's now carrying over into, it's probably been the case. It was the case when I was a player. It's pay to play in pro ball too, because it is who can afford to stay in this the longest. Dick Tidrow, who is in player development. He was a player development executive with the Giants. Played years in the big leagues. He said, everyone figures it out eventually. It's just whether the guy's still in the game or not. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if that's the case, it's like, what about the guy who can't afford to stick it out any longer?
Yeah.
If it's just about who's going to figure it out eventually, it's like some guys figure it out in 2 years. Some guys figure it out in 10 years. and I don't know if that's necessarily true for everybody, but if it is true, then why aren't people given the tools they're needed to succeed?
The overwhelming change in baseball isn't just minor league baseball. The changing perception of baseball isn't just in minor league baseball. It's, as a kid, you feel like you need to do these travel ball tournaments, and it's pay to play. And baseball itself has turned itself into this place where you have to have the best bat, and you have to have the best gear, and you have to have the best whatever, or you won't make it to the major leagues. You have to be 12 years old to do a national tournament. And so from a financial perspective, there are less people feel like baseball is an unattainable sport to play because of the cost of playing.
Totally.
Conversely, moving through high school, you have to play in showcase leagues. You have to do travel tournaments. It's more, it's centralized in certain locations: Phoenix, Florida, Georgia, and LA. Right. Houston has a tournament, and Dallas has tournaments too. But when you look at the perfect game, where the most scouts are,
it's all around there. Yeah.
Right. So there's money associated with that. Then you go into college, and you're not getting a full ride scholarship at any level. Baseball players get 11 scholarships for an entire college team in D1, and I don't know the number in D2. There are good guys that come out of JUCO, but JUCO is seen as less because it's community college, and baseball players want it seems like the growing trend is, I want to be a D1 baseball player, and you negate the value of going to a JUCO, which Erickson will tell you that being a JUCO bandit has a lot of value. I played Division III, and I didn't get scholarship, but I played every game that that our team played for 4 years.
Right.
And I played summer ball, and that has value in that I had so much more opportunity than someone who sat on a bench for 2 years.
Totally.
Got a little bit of opportunity in his junior year, and then maybe played his senior year.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's such a great point, that it's because baseball is all about getting reps, right? That's how you get better. It's been proven that if you read the book, it's the Sports Gene. What's his name? I can't remember the author's name, but basically he talks about why Jenny Finch has struck out every single Major League Baseball player that she's faced. And it's because baseball players don't have a database in their mind for how the ball moves underhand. They're just like everyone else trying to react. Everyone has about the same reaction time, every human. But baseball players, right, or like anyone, when you develop a skill, you're actually learning how the ball is moving up here. So you're making predictions before the ball even comes. You're not reacting, you're predicting. A good example that he uses is that chess grandmasters versus novices, when they're flashed a board of chess pieces and asked to recall them, the chess grandmasters are infinitely better at predicting or that recalling the board of where the pieces were on the board, if it's a setup that is common in chess. If the arrangement of the pieces is flashed on the board and it's something that could never possibly show up in chess, it's like impossible strategy wise for this to show up. Novices or grandmasters were no better at predicting at recalling the pieces than the novices. So what that says is that the skill that they're developing as the grandmasters, they are seeing the pieces on the board and they can just recall that because they know that's where it's going to be. That's where that piece is going to be because that piece was there. It's the same thing with the ball moving up here. It's like, oh, this looks like this similar pitch. Is all happening in like nanoseconds. But it speaks to how important the reps are. Like you said, with Tipping Point, with 10,000 hours, it shows how important it is to get those reps. And when you go to a D3 school, as opposed to going a D1 school and riding the bench, it's exponentially better for your playing career.
And so I look at perfect example is Kyler Murray in one summer, or whatever time frame it was. Kyler Murray showed the value of baseball to kids. And he chose football because it's an immediate payout, endorsements, eyeballs on him, and he was going to be a higher pick than he was in baseball, which was 11 overall to the A's. He was number 1 overall to the Cardinals. The A's were unwilling to pay what he was asking for, which is I think around $16 million to then go play baseball, where he would have sat on a bus for 2 or 3 years and then had to play big league baseball for another 4 years to then get arbitration before he's paid out, before he's getting the equal amount of money that he would have made in the NFL. So for kids to see Kyler Murray chose football, they know who Kyler Murray is because they watch college football. But if you ask a baseball player, name 5 baseball players, they'll tell you Yelich, Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, Javi Baez, and Giancarlo or Aaron Judge.
Mm-hmm.
And then after those superstars, then it's really regionalized. Because baseball itself hasn't made an impact in social media like the NBA and the NFL and college football have, because they've reserved the rights to all of that media. So less kids now are visibly able to actually see it where they are. And I look at the future of baseball in the discussions that we have about minor league baseball, right? And the perception of that and what kids are going through to actually get to college. And then, and I'm worried about the future of baseball. If the average age of people watching continues to increase and the participation of baseball continues to decrease, we only want what's best for the game. Is there a right solution to fix it? I don't know. Only time will tell, but I'm interested in what you think about that, about where baseball is and where it's going, as someone who has been able to see it from different angles.
Sure. I think baseball was set up, obviously, with COVID-19. It's global pandemic that we're having. It's a different landscape. It was set up to be an interesting season, right? With the Astros scandal. I think that's a great storyline. It's what made the 90s and 2000s so fun for baseball, not just steroids, right? Everyone hitting home runs. I think it was more about the storylines, right? You had Sosa versus McGuire, you had Griffey, Jeter, these were just characters, right? It's all storytelling. Like marketing and PR, it all ends up just being storytelling, right? So this was a great story to lead off the 2020 season into a new decade with the Astros, right? It's everyone versus the Astros. And I think that's a fun story. Obviously it's bad for the integrity of the game, right? Obviously. But I think when it comes to people paying attention, they pay attention because of characters and storylines. And it's in any form of entertainment. It's because it's not just about the game being played on the field, because you can have you can have players hitting home runs in non-major league stadiums, right? It's like, granted, the guys aren't throwing 100 miles an hour, but you can get that in other places. But it's more of like, what is the actual thing happening behind the scenes? And I think that's what makes the NBA so interesting, is that there's all these characters and storylines that are happening that you're like, oh, okay, that conversation then continues on Twitter, right? Where KD's like arguing with Kendrick Perkins about something on Twitter, right? It's like, that's a storyline that then continues, and fans can be a part of. And you don't have, there's like, feels like a real disconnect when it comes to baseball, the access and the fans in that way just feels a lot more distant. And also I don't think that because there's not a lot of characters, and baseball is so regional specific, like you said, with all the networks and whatnot, that your team, like, that's it. You're rooting for laundry. You're not rooting for the players. And because you don't get to know your players as easily, you're not as attached to them. So it's just like, okay, we bring in the next guy. We don't have a Derek Jeter who's a lifer with that organization. Now, granted, the NBA doesn't do that, but it's such a player-driven league that I don't think it needs it, but because of the way baseball's set up, it's so regional, and I mean, it's so nuanced. It's so nuanced, but it's hard to boil it down to like a few factors. But I unfortunately, like with COVID-19, it would like I have no idea what the future of baseball will look like, and the NBA had such an advantage this year of at least playing some of their season with fans in the stands, whereas MLB has to either have to play a full season with no fans in the stands and then start up really quickly after that, or not play that season with no fans and risk being out of the zeitgeist for, you know, however, what would it be, like 18, 20, like 20 months? That's crazy, right? It's nuts. So I think that's like the predicament Major League Baseball is in right now when it comes to where they're going to go. And obviously, like, there's a ton of stuff on the player side too.
Can you explain your work with Advocates for Minor Leaguers and why you've decided to put your name behind that with Ty and with Garrett?
Yeah, so Advocates for Minor Leaguers, fairly self-explanatory with the with the title, but obviously all of us involved have seen it. We went through it. Ty was one of them that made it through the minor leagues that we were talking about to the major leagues, and you like everything, literally everything that we talked about on this episode, that you see all these things and it's just not right. Like, these players should be paid what they're worth. And for me, I grew up in minor league baseball. We were a host family for the AA affiliate, the Red Sox AA affiliate in Portland, Maine, the Sea Dogs. I grew up going to those games. Then we ended up hosting players. And then after that, they asked me to be the bullpen catcher, and I didn't get paid. But I got to be exposed to it, obviously, like keeping my eligibility and whatnot. But I was exposed to it at such a young age. And I think that you're really naive, and you're told that you're supposed to do it for the love of the game and for the journey. And like we talked about, the romanticizing of baseball and the journey, it's really fetishizing it to a point where we're just okay with people not being paid what they're worth. And it's like, these aren't boys living their dream. These are grown men. These are adults who have mortgages, who have families, that they have student debt, and they also need to be professional athletes, right? And I think that's where, to me, it was like, I've seen this for so long, and I wanted to do something about it. And I think getting together with the people that we have on our team, they're just absolute pros, and Garrett at the helm, just really strong message of like, our minor league baseball players should be paid more, and their rights should be taken into account. They should have a seat at the bargaining table.
Yeah. And I think our place in that too, with More Than Baseball, is to, and we're lucky to have you guys now as part of that discourse. Early on with More Than Baseball, we disagreed with how to go about it, I think, on that side and on our side. And I think initially it needed to have the day-to-day covered so that the conversation of what needs to happen can happen. And
Totally.
I'm happy that we've had national success and big leaguers support what we do, because it only opens the door for more people to come in and contribute to the discourse of what needs to happen for baseball. And we frame everything as, if you love baseball, you love us, right? And we don't talk bad about Major League Baseball. We could, and people who are going to listen to this say we should, but I think we want, our mission is to work with all sides. And I think yours is as well. And it's just acknowledging the fact that if these guys were paid more, they would perform better at their job. And if these guys had the tools they needed to perform better at their job, they would. And so Major League Baseball is only taking away from the value that it has by continuing to be stubborn about a situation like this.
No, 100%. And yeah, everything you guys are doing with More Than Baseball, it's so important. And you guys are making an impact daily. And I think that is so huge. And especially during this time of a global pandemic when everyone's struggling. But obviously minor league baseball players are struggling as well. And not only that, they are trying to keep their jobs.
They're trying to stay in shape to be professional athletes.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
trying to take care of their families when they haven't had a paycheck since last September. And, I think we have to talk openly about like the situation in which they're put in. They're guys who are on the hook for 12 months a year, are under contract for 7 years when they initially sign. But because of this, their contract was pulled and they were available, or they're able to apply for unemployment. But what we're seeing is that players are beginning to get released. And it's so unfortunate because they would be in the middle of their season right now. And the guys who are getting released, would be performing. And right now they're being released because they don't have value, when in fact they do. In a real situation they would. And I could only imagine what it's like for a guy like you and me. Were done playing when we were done playing.
Mm-hmm.
And we were fulfilled with our careers, and our careers were a success any way you look at it. But for some guys, they're going to be released without knowing and achieving their optimum performance and fulfilling their potential.
You're right. A ton of what ifs for them.
And it's so unfortunate. And I think as people who love baseball, I think we just have to protect the integrity of the game by just speaking about it the right way, and speaking about it respectfully, but also acknowledging that like these guys are unfortunately in trouble moving forward. And I'm happy that there's people who are, actually devoting their time and their lives to like fixing it and doing something about it.
Likewise, man, you guys are doing amazing work.
And so it's interesting really to look at this situation from like a bird's eye view and look at it from 10,000 feet, because it's a very simple fix. It's allow the players resources in any form that will enable them to play better, and they will. And you were talking earlier about like predicting, this pitch. But when I talk about what these players are going through, it's as easy as giving them a mattress. This kid had a mattress, he would play better.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know. I remember I got demoted one year from San Jose to Augusta, and I moved in with a bunch of guys who were already moved in, right? I was like, okay, well, where do I go? I'm like, I got to live in the living room. Okay. Well, I had an air mattress. So I slept on an air mattress all season. And then the last month of the season, my air mattress popped. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to buy a new thing. I'm just going to sleep on the couch. So I slept on the couch for the last month of the season. Not very comfortable, right? But it's just like, there's just those resources aren't there, like you said.
And people would say, and we don't even tailor to fans who say, well, boo-hoo. What we do is not going to be fixed by fans who say boo-hoo. And so we're able not to focus on the negative, but on the positives. Instead of saying no more sleeping on couches, it's let's enable them to get a mattress, an affordable mattress, a mattress topper, for an air mattress, anything that will ensure that they can sleep properly. And obviously sleep leads to better performance, and better performance leads to more opportunities for development. And it's a cycle that we're working on without Major League Baseball teams saying anything. I can work with their players and get them the things they need. And I don't need the okay from a team.
Right.
And so from someone who has played I never played full season baseball, but for someone who did play 142 games in a season, or had to prepare for 142 games in the season.
Sure. I definitely didn't play 142 games in a season.
For 5 years, you said your career was. What is that like on the daily grind of one off day a month for a 7-month period, making $55 to $75 a game?
Yeah, I think my mantra back then was find novelty in monotony. So it's to always look for the new, because every single day, like you've been hitting in the cage, it feels like Groundhog Day. Everything, you're going to the same 5 parks because your league is small or whatever. So find novelty and monotony was my mantra, and always looking for the novel, the new, of like, oh wow, like I didn't notice this little thing on my, like when I'm hitting, or hey, that's like being appreciative of something at the ballpark, right? It's like always looking for certain things to get me through the season.
What do you think separates a Ty Kelly, who I don't know I can't remember what round he was in, but it was after the 15th, I think. Casper Wells was a 13th rounder who we've talked to before, and Danny Valencia, who's on Team Israel with me and Ty, was a 19th rounder. Those guys made it to the big leagues. Danny was an everyday guy. Casper was an everyday guy, but Ty was up and down with a few teams. But there was something that they did that separated them either mentally or physically. But do you think it came down for them to make the major leagues, and for someone with the same skill level, maybe in a different round or different situation, who didn't? Do you think for those guys who do make it, who weren't supposed to make it, do you think it's skill? Do you think it's a mixture of skill and mentality? Or do you think it's luck plays a component in that?
Sure. I mean, there's always going to be a variable of luck in everything that we do in life, right? It's just being in the right place at the right time. Granted, there's like talent will outweigh that, but I think for someone like Ty, it was just consistency, right? He was like, you could depend on him no matter what. Like you put him at any position. Not only can you put him at any position, but you know he's going to make the play. He's going to make the routine ones. He might not make the flashiest ones, but you know he's going to make that routine play. And he's going to give you solid at-bats, right? And I think over the course of 162 games, that's what you need. And that's what it means to be a major leaguer. And it's not the like, oh, this guy has good tools, right? That's what the minor leagues is. Oh, this guy has a good tool or tools. So I think it's really making those tools consistent. It's like Ty, I don't like his standout tool is his ability to do anything and be the one that's going to get it done. Like that's not one of the 5 tools, right? But it's like such a commodity in the major leagues.
Do you see your career as a success?
Definitely. Yeah. I think it got me to where I am now. And I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing now if I didn't play baseball, and specifically at the professional level. When it comes to working in entertainment now, it's like I was making all my connections when I was playing and finding the overlap of baseball fans and people who work in entertainment, and really like making connections there.
Is there something you would tell young Matt, or a high school or college kid, that is there something that you learned along the way that you knew would be valuable to you at, in high school or college, or in your first few years in the minor leagues?
Yeah, I think like invest in yourself more off the field. I think there's more to life than just baseball. I think that would be the message that I'd say is like start figuring out what you love outside of baseball. Because I was really just all baseball all the time.
That's a hot take.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah. Because what I've heard from teams is they want players to focus baseball all the time, which just burns you out. And there's obviously, you can find research that says, if you have a job that, takes as much time and effort as playing professional baseball does, but you have a release somewhere.
Yeah. You need to be a professional when you're at work,
Mhm.
when you're doing your work, but it's okay to disconnect and be outside of that. And I think I never gave myself the opportunities to do that early on in my life. So I would say definitely find what you enjoy earlier on. And I could have been, you know, thinking about like I wouldn't have found like I always knew I loved YouTube and I loved digital and I loved TV and film, and it just like it didn't dawn on me that I wanted to work in that until later.
Professional baseball is your career. Turn a hobby and a passion into a career after you're done playing.
Sure. And I think it's also like my exposure to it, to that career lended it myself to be like, oh, that's something that I could attain. Like I could be a professional baseball player, which is like a wild thing to say as a kid growing up in Maine. Like how many kids from Maine end up making it to play professional ball? It's very few and far between. But I think it was like I was surrounded by it growing up that I was like, oh, I know someone who's done that. At least like I have a blueprint for it. Whereas working in entertainment, like growing up in Maine, I didn't know a single person that worked in entertainment, right? Not one person worked in entertainment that lived in Portland, Maine, because it's all out here in Los Angeles or in New York or whatever, or Atlanta, I guess now. So I guess it's just like exposure and like, yeah, learning what other professions besides just professional athlete.
The average career in minor league baseball is 4.5 years. That gives you 4.5 years to perfect a hobby, perfect a passion, to then turn it into something. And I think that's the number one thing I've told people. I played 18 months. I got released 18 months into my career. I got injured, had surgery, got released. And I didn't have time to even get my bearings in professional baseball. It was all such a rush. And for guys who play 4.5 years, I think it's so daunting to kind of think about that on a daily basis. For 7 months a year, you're going to have to perform at the best of your ability. And then the other 5 months, you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know for you, if there was something you did in the off season or something you did at your apartment after games or at the hotel that allowed you to separate yourself from baseball so that you could be fresh the next day.
Yeah, it was making my videos. It's just like focusing on that
As a creative outlet for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely writing the sketches and stuff like that, and just learning. I think just learning new skills, like video editing, shooting, whatever. Yeah, totally either skill acquisition or creating.
For someone who's listening to this, who's a minor leaguer who wants to get into that field, what would you tell him, to work on now to prepare himself for that?
I would say figure out how you can, if it's comedy or if it's drama, whatever or if it's unscripted where you want to work in TV and film or digital, I think it's figuring out what really interests you and then meeting those people who are fans of baseball like I did. I think that is a pretty good blueprint for how you can make connections, because there's so many baseball fans who work in entertainment. I don't know why it's so ingrained in the culture of entertainment that it just lends itself to fandom, especially like comedians and Mets fans. I think that's like the most consistent one that across the board.
It's because comedians are Jewish and Jews are Mets fans, and that's it right there.
I think it's like being a Mets fan lends itself to some bit of like just being disappointed or like you're right. And it's like,
yeah.
in comedy is bred from just shitty situations,
Disappointment and expectation.
Yes.
Yeah. I grew up a Mets fan. I'm also Jewish. And there's a part of me that is me because of my Mets fandom.
Sure.
And I can't think of a fan base. You can say Chicago, but Chicago is built more on pride than constantly losing.
Yeah, they were perennial losers.
Yeah.
And that was like, I think it was more of just like the fandom of the city and whatnot, like you were saying.
And so playing for them, being drafted by them was really a dream come true. Playing for them, I got to see how the sausage was made. And you get to see the inner workings of an organization. And I'm so grateful for my time with the Mets that, it taught me everything I ever wanted to know about baseball. And so, like, the Mets fans I talk to now, they're like, what's it like? And I go, it's everything you think it would be and more. And so I'm not sure if being with the Giants, if that's something that, if there's something from being with that organization. You were there around when they won a World Series. So what was that? Yeah.
So they had just gotten off of the 2012 World Series. It was like, because I signed in 2013, and then the next year they had won in 2014. So yeah, I mean, it was like the organization to be in at the time. Yeah, I mean, it was tons of amazing players would come through and rehab and whatnot. And I mean, it was just an amazing experience. And the Giants were a great organization in general when it came to like providing certain things. When they came to food, they always like did a good job when it came to player development. It's just like the system isn't set up for them to pay their players more, right? And I think it's telling that they're the organization that they weren't the first ones, obviously the Blue Jays, but they were like, oh no, we're going to take the 2021 salaries. If we had the season going on right now, granted we don't, but the Giants were prepared to pay their players the new updated salaries that were going to be in 2021. They were going to do it a year early. And I just think that speaks to how progressive that organization is as a whole.
I can't thank you enough for your time. I think we talked for 2 hours in Cuba. I think we had chatted.
Doesn't feel like it, man.
Before. But I really appreciate your insight and your passion for baseball.
Oh my gosh, man. No, what you guys are doing with More Than Baseball is amazing. And like, kudos to you guys, and like just such amazing work. And you guys are truly like making a difference on a daily basis.
Thank you. The right things will happen. History's going to be on our side.
Totally.
That's what I've been saying since the beginning. And I couldn't be more thankful for the amount of people and good people that just want the best for baseball. Lastly, your walk-up song was what?
When I was not in San Jose, every other place, it would be Hip Hop Hooray, because it rhymed with my last name, Paré. When I was in San Jose, though, it was the Silicon Valley theme song, the HBO show, Silicon Valley, and they would be the theme song. So those were the two walk-up songs I would go with.
Well, thank you so much for your time, dude. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeremy.
The Grind is a 940 media production. For more information on More Than Baseball, you can follow us at MTB_ORG on Instagram and Twitter, or visit our website, morethanbaseball.org. And real quick, before you go, if you're in Dallas, Phoenix, San Antonio, LA, Tampa, San Francisco, New York, DC, Chicago, across the country, we're running a series of camps brought to you by More Than Baseball and our network of minor leaguers, and we'd love for you guys to participate. If you're in one of these areas and want to know more information, go to morethanbaseball.org or shoot us an email, hello@morethanbaseball.org.